Hey, what's up, Musers? This is John at Muse for You, here to help you build awesome websites without code. And in this video tutorial, I'm going to go over the new widget that I just released. It is the Staggered Animations widget. And here are the features included, the different transformations you can do with it, and the different ways you can trigger the animation. I'm going to show a preview of this widget so it's easier to explain. But over here to the left, we have a few widget options, and then we have the preview pages here. So I'll preview the first example here. So as we can see, we have different elements animating one after another to create this animation, and it's the number 9. And then you can use play, pause, and restart buttons to play the animation again, and they just play in a sequence. So all this was done by adding these elements into Adobe Muse, or adding the elements to Adobe Muse, and then assigning the same graphic style name to all the elements. So literally it was just selecting all the elements and applying one graphic style name to all the elements, and then it just creates the staggered animation. Really nice, very good. All right, and then I'll go back to the shop, and then we have the on scroll. So here we have the trigger, and then here we have the start, and once the start reaches the trigger, the animation will animate. Looks good. And then you can play it forward, you can play it backwards, and you can play it so it alternates forward and backwards. So you can have it trigger every time it goes past the trigger point, or you could just have it play once with the on scroll widget there. Okay, and then I'll go back to the shop, and then we have the domino effect. Looks good, and then it goes back. So you can add SVG elements, PNG elements, or create rectangles or ellipses or circles in Adobe Muse and apply the sequence or the staggered animation to the various elements. Okay, and then we have this example here. Alright, so this widget can be a lot of fun, and in this video tutorial I'm going to show where to access this widget and how to use it. So I'll go back to the shop. So to access this widget, you simply go to museforyoushop.com, and here you can click on the pop-up, and here you can click subscribe to get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Or if you'd like to subscribe with PayPal, you can click here and subscribe with PayPal. The staggered animations widget is right here, and here you can click add to cart to purchase individually, or again you can get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. And here we have the features included, the transformations, and pretty much everything I went over in the beginning, and the preview pages here. So I'll go ahead and jump right into Adobe Muse. Here we have a blank page here. So here I downloaded an image from Adobe stock, this number 9 here. I'll say yes. I'll open it in Adobe Illustrator. Let me zoom out a bit. So here we have the number 9. So the first thing I'm going to do is ungroup, and then I'm just going to delete this background here, and I'm going to make this this number 9 a bit bigger. So the width, I'll say 400, and it'll change the height as well. So there we have the element, and I'll have to right click and ungroup again because I want to select each individual element here. And basically what I want to do is copy and paste all of these elements in the order I want them to animate in Adobe Muse. So just for this example, I'm going to start with this element here, so it goes around to create the 9. So I'll hit Command-C to copy, I'll go into Muse and paste. And actually before I do that, for reference, I want to select all of these elements, hit Command-C to copy, and then paste into Adobe Muse. So I have this element here as a reference. So let me just move this to the right, and I'll try to resize these windows so I can use both Illustrator and Adobe Muse at the same time. So here I'll copy this element here, and I'll paste into here, and then I'll just overlay it here in Adobe Muse. So I'm just going to copy the larger elements to show as an example, and then I'll go to the finished version that I've created. So I'm just copying the larger circles here, just like this. And I'll copy this one and paste. So if you have a really intricate animation, it could take some time, but it could make for a really interesting animation for your website. All right, I'll paste that there. I'll hit Command-C and then Command-V to paste. Paste right in here, just like that. And then this one, paste, and I'll paste it right in there. Command-C, paste, and right in there, and then paste again, And almost done here, just a few more. Right in there, this one, and a few more here. So this one, and this one here. So I'm hoping maybe in a later update, Adobe Muse will make it so that when you copy elements from Adobe Illustrator, it'll copy into layers, which would be a lot of fun and will save a lot of time, because I could literally just copy all of these at the same time and paste them into Adobe Muse, and it would create new layers. So that would be cool if that did happen. Okay, so there I've pasted quite a few elements, and I'm just going to hide the background layer here. So there we go, we just have the number 9 like that. So it doesn't look like anything too great because it doesn't have all these little dots around it. But just as an example, I'm going to show, I'm going to animate these dots here with the Staggered Animations widget. So I'll go into the library panel, and to get access to the Staggered Animations widget, you simply type in STGRD, which is short for Staggered Animations there. And for this one, I'm not going to do on scroll, I'm going to do on load. So I'll click, hold, and drag and place onto my Adobe Muse website. And then I'll bring in the Staggered on load widget here. So the add first goes on top, and then we have the Staggered Animations widget. So the graphic style name here is Animate1. So we want to apply this graphic style name to all of these elements here. So all we have to do is select them all, just like this. Go to the graphic styles panel. If you don't see the graphic styles panel, you can go to window and click graphic styles. And the same for the library panel. You can go to window and click library if you don't see the library panel. And then here I'll create a new style from the attributes applied by clicking on this icon here. That kind of looks like a piece of paper. I'll double click and I'll say Animate1. And this applies the graphic style name to all of these elements here. So if you go through and select them individually, you'll see that they all have the graphic style name Animate1. So that's it. That's all we had to do there, is just apply the graphic style name to all the elements. And then, yeah, we want to apply a transformation. So we can scale, translate, rotate, change the border radius, and the background color. So for this one, I want to scale from 0 to 1. So it's going to start from 0 and scale to the size it is now. 1 is the default size for the element. Anything larger would be larger than what it is now here. So here I'll go to File, Preview Page, and Browser. And just like that, we have a staggered animation. And we can see that it's playing forward and then backwards. So here in the widget, the direction, we can say normal, which would just play forward. We can say reverse, which would play backwards. And we can say alternate, which is forward and backwards. And then we can have it autoplay and we can have it loop. So here, if I uncheck loop, it'll just play forward once and then backwards and then stop. So it's just gonna be, yeah, going to nothing there. But if I wanted to just play normal, it would just play forward once and then it would stop, just like that. Looks good. Okay, and you can change the easing options, so you can choose from over 30 different easing options. So if I chose ease in out elastic and I preview, we're gonna have this nice little bouncy kind of animation there. Looks good. Or ease out elastic would probably be nicer. You can change the animation stagger delay. So if I made this larger, then it would be a bit slower. And you can change the animation duration. So the animation for each dot will last a second, and after 500 milliseconds, it'll play the next animation. So it'll be a bit slow, but depending on what you're going for, it could work. So we can see each animation lasts a second, and the time in between each animation is 500 milliseconds. Okay, so that's in the animation stagger delay, and in the animation duration. The elasticity just makes the animation a bit more fluid, so you can kind of work with that there. The initial opacity, it kind of works with the fade in here, and it's great for on load, because sometimes when previewing an animation, you'll sometimes see the animation really quickly before it animates. So having this initial opacity set to 0 and then the on scroll fade in enabled, then you can make sure that you don't see the animation before it starts animating. And you can change the fade in duration. So if I set 1000, then the first element there will just fade in a little bit. So we can see it faded in and then it comes in. Looks good. All right, so you can work with the fade in option there, and the transform origin, you can set from where the transformation comes in. So if we set it to 0 and 0, it would animate from the top left. So just picture like a grid and a graph. 0, 0 is the top left, 100, 100% is the bottom right, and yeah, 50, 50 is the middle. The animation will animate from the middle. So if I set it to 0, 0, it's going to come in from the top left. So we'll just take a look. So we can see these dots are coming in kind of like this from the top left, and they're just coming in from the top left and animating to the bottom right. Okay, so you can just work with that there, the transform origin. Just picture like a graph, and 50, 50 is the middle of the graph. Okay, so we can scale. Here we're scaling from 0 to 1. We can translate on the x-axis and the y-axis. So if I said 100 and 150, it's going to move to the right 100 pixels, and then down 150 pixels. You can enter in a negative value here if you want it to go to the left. So let's see how that looks. Could be kind of interesting. So you can see they're all moving, and let's make it a little bit faster here. Let me close these tabs. And we'll make it, we'll change it back to 100, and the duration we'll say 500 milliseconds. All right, that's a bit fast there, but looks pretty cool. And it goes off the browser because it's all moving to the right and down. Okay, so that's a translate. Rotate, you're not going to really notice the rotate because they're circles, but you can rotate elements 360 degrees or more. With the rotate here. You can change the border radius, and this works well with the rectangle tool here in Adobe Muse, and I'll showcase that in a second, and the same for the background color. So that's basically it, and you can have play, pause, and restart buttons. So if I created some text, said play, and I'll copy this, paste. I'm not going to really style these too much, maybe a little bit. Make it a little bit larger here. Yeah, that looks good. So we have play, and I'll just copy this. And we have pause, and I'll paste again. And we have restart. Okay, so here I'll just click on each of these, go to the graphic styles panel here in Adobe Muse, create a new graphic style name, and I'll say play. For the pause button, the graphic style name is pause, and for the restart button, the graphic style is restart. Okay, so if I preview in the browser, we have it there. I can click restart, and it keeps restarting the animation. I can pause it, play it, and let me take off the translate so it's not moving down. Okay. There we go. You can restart it. You can play it, pause, play, play, pause, play, and restart. And I can add the image cursor widget so that each of these buttons has a pointer on them. So I can say play and pause. Yeah, there, and restart. Okay, so now they have a pointer on them, so they look more like buttons. Looks good. All right, so I'll go ahead and open the website that I have for the preview page. So it's in here, just so we can see it really quick. So as you can see, I've pasted in all of the elements. And it's basically what I did in the first demonstration, just with more elements. And we can see all the dots come in just like that. So instead of just having the bigger ones, I added the smaller ones as well. And we can restart, pause, play, just like that. And then for the on scroll, we have the on scroll as well. And let me preview that actually in the first demonstration here. So what I'll do is I'll just move these elements down, just like this, and then I'll delete these first two widgets, and I'll go into my library panel again, and I'll bring in the STGRD, the staggered add first on scroll. So for on scroll animations, you want to bring the on scroll widgets just like this. All right, and then yeah, I'll just again do the scale from 0 to 1. And then here we have the on scroll options. We have on scroll offset from top. 1 will start the animation as soon as it reaches the bottom of the browser. 0.5 is the middle of the browser, and the on scroll duration we have it set to 500 pixels here. So here I'll just click on add indicators, and for on scroll I do recommend having the initial opacity set to 0 and then the fade in enabled. That way the animation doesn't show before it triggers on scroll. So here I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser. I'll kind of demonstrate this. I added indicators here in the widget, so we can see, here I clicked on Add Indicators, so we can see when the animation will trigger. So here I'll scroll down, and here we see we have Start, and we see we don't see the animation, and that's because we have the initial opacity set to 0, and once it reaches the trigger, it comes in just like that. Looks good. Perfect. All right, so we have it on scroll there as well. Perfect. And the other thing I will show, I didn't quite show this with the on load, but I will show it really quick. We have these random widgets, and they're right here. So here I'll bring the add first on load, and then I'll bring in the random on load. So random is kind of fun because here if we go to scale, we set the scale minimum value to 0, and then the maximum value we can set to 1. And what it will do is it will select a random value between 0 and 1, and it'll apply it to the different elements. So as an example, I'll just preview that real quick, and let me add ease out elastic, and then I'll preview in the browser. And as we can see, the elements are scaling and not scaling kind of randomly. So we have a few that aren't even scaling because they have the value 1 applied to it. So you can kind of create a random sequence there. And just for kind of a better example, I'll set the maximum value to 2. So it'll choose between a value of 0 and 2. So some will get really large and some will get really small. Just like that. All right. And it kind of depends on the image too, because when the image gets bigger, it kind of loses a bit of quality there. But you can play with that and have kind of a random animation there. Or if I wanted to randomly move them to the right, I could say the X minimum value for translate to 0, and then I could set the max value to 150. And let me set the scale back to 1 there, and then we'll see they'll all move to the right, kind of in a random order, just like that. So you can have a lot of fun with this and kind of work with this to create an interesting animation. All right, so those are the random widgets, and the same would apply with the on scroll. They would just randomly work on scroll. So you set a minimum and a maximum value, and then any number in between those values gets applied randomly to the elements that have the graphic style name applied to them. So I went over the add first on load, add first on scroll, and the random widgets, and that's basically it. The last thing I'll show is working with rectangles in Adobe Muse. So with SVG elements and let me go back to the website here. With SVG elements and PNGs, or any element that's not a rectangle or an ellipse in Adobe Muse, it will animate in the order that it's in the layers panel. So we can see here, this first element is at the bottom, so it starts at the bottom and goes all the way to the top. If you see the layers panel here, we have all of the SVG elements, and it goes from the bottom to the top. So with SVG elements, it works really well because it just works, you can rearrange the layers panel to have the elements animate how you would like. With rectangles, it works a little bit differently. It doesn't quite work with the bottom to the top, but I'll showcase that here. So I'll create, let's say, 3 rectangles, and I'll use the CC libraries. And one thing when creating rectangles as well, kind of a little shortcut or a little tip, let's say I kind of color these random colors just like this. So we have these 3 colors, and let me align them a little bit better. like this. So we have these three colors, and I'll go ahead and apply the graphic style name animate1 to all of these. So we can see when I applied the graphic style name that it changed the color for all of these elements, because it started with this element and applied that graphic style to these elements as well. So you'll want to apply the graphic style name first, and then afterwards you can change the colors. So you're not kind of doing double work there. So apply the graphic style name first and then change the colors. So here I'll go into the library panel and I'll type in stgrd, and I'll bring in the add first on load, place it right there, and then I'll bring in the on load widget here. So for this one, what I'll do, I'll just have it scale from 0 to 1, and we'll add a little ease out elastic there. Okay, so that's basically it. So if I go to File, Preview Page in Browser, we can see it goes from left to right. It's a little bit fast. Let me slow it down a little bit. Okay, it goes from left to right. And even if I went into the Layers panel, and so the first one, we have the second one and the third one. If I brought the third one up and kind of rearranged the order, so now the third one is at the bottom, the second one still in the middle, and the first one is at the top. So normally what would happen is that it would animate the yellow one first, the middle one, and then the first one. But with rectangles, it works a little bit differently. So as you can see, it still animates from left to right. So with rectangle or the ellipse tool, using those tools, the animation will animate from left to right. And just as an example, I'll just copy these, or let's see, we'll copy like this and like this. So if I preview, so we can see it's going from the bottom to the top. So this is actually a good example. So it's going to animate, it's animating from the left to the right, just like that. But let's say I wanted the top section to animate first and then the bottom section. What I could do is group the top section and the bottom section. So I could select all of these elements, right click and select group, and then select all of these elements and then group. So what it'll do is it'll animate the first group from left to right, and then it'll animate the second group. So that's just a kind of a quick tip there. With rectangles and the ellipse tool, when creating those in Adobe Muse, and the ellipse tool is right here, they'll animate from left to right, whereas SVGs or PNGs or any other elements will animate within the layers panel, within the layers panel from the bottom to the top. But rectangles and the ellipse tool will animate from left to right, and you can group elements to have them animate first, and then select, and then group elements so that those elements animate first and then the next elements animate. Looks good. All right, so I think I've covered everything with the Staggered Animations widget. These are the widget options. You can scale, translate, rotate, change the border radius. So for instance, on this one, if I wanted to make them circles, I'll set the border radius to 100 in pixels, and then if I preview again, they'll turn into circles as it's animating, and then back to squares. So that's pretty cool there. And then you can change the background color as well. So if I click on background color and enable background color, the colors will change as they're animating. All right. And if I make it a little bit slower here, let's change it to 1000. We can probably see that a bit better. Or let's set the scale from 0.5 to 1. So we kind of see that color change. Yeah, so you can see it's changing colors, and we have that nice staggered animation. Looks good. And that's kind of what I did with the dominoes effect. So if I go to the dominoes effect here, we can see it changes color, and it's actually rotating 60 degrees to the right, and we have this domino effect there. Okay, and I can pause it, play it, restart. Yeah, if it starts at the end, it'll restart from the end there. All right, looks good. So yeah, I think I've gone over everything. You can disable it at a breakpoint. So if you don't want it to play before a certain breakpoint, or like let's say you set it to 480, any breakpoint less than 480, the staggered animation won't work. I do recommend using it more on a desktop version and even fixed width. Sometimes it's easier to work with fixed width website and just applying the animation to the elements on the fixed width. But if you did have breakpoints, it does work across breakpoints. So if I select all these elements, I'm going to resize to responsive width and height by going to resize and selecting responsive width and height. And then I'll add a few breakpoints in here, and we can see they get smaller, just like that. So we have those 3 breakpoints, and let's preview. And let me make this a little bit faster in here. So we'll say 400, and the duration we'll say 500. All right, so there we go. And it goes back. And then let's take a look at the smaller breakpoints. Perfect. Looks good. So we have those animations there. Okay, yeah, and if you did want to disable it at a certain breakpoint, you could. If I clicked here and I preview again, and I scroll, hit refresh, we can see that those elements are not animating. So you do have to hit refresh, because if you start at the largest breakpoint where it is animating and you resize, it's still going to think that it's, you know, it's inheriting from the largest breakpoint. So you just have to hit refresh. And on devices that are lower than 480 pixels, when the page loads on those devices, then it won't animate, it won't do the animation, the staggered animation. Yep, I went over the play buttons, and there's more info here. Here I covered the rectangles and ellipse options in Adobe Muse and how SVGs work a little bit different. They work within the layer panel, layers panel. So the lowest layer goes first, or the lowest layer element like SVG or PNG goes first up to the top layer, and you can rearrange in the layers panel. Rectangle and ellipse options work from left to right, and you can group elements to have them animate in a certain order. Okay, and I went over transform origin and all the options here. And yep, there's the random, you can select the random staggered animation and kind of have elements animate from a random value that you set within the widget and that you set to the transformations. So if you have any questions about this widget, feel free to ask me in the comment section below. Also, there's a community section on the widget page. I'll be happy to answer any questions there. But this is a really fun, for me, I really enjoyed working with this widget and creating interesting animations with it. So to get access to this widget, let me resize this here. To get access to the widget, you simply go to museforyoushop.com, and here you can click on the pop-up, and here you can click subscribe to get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. Or if you'd like to subscribe with PayPal, you can click here and subscribe with PayPal. And right here we have the staggered animations widget, and here you can click add to cart to purchase individually, or again you can get access to all widgets and any new widgets I come out with for $39 a year. And here there's more information about the widget, basically everything I've covered in this video tutorial. Here are more of the widget options, the preview pages that I went over in the beginning. We have the preview on scroll as well. Looks good. We have the dominoes preview, just like that. And we have this example here. Looks good. So in this example, I actually applied shadows and different things to the rectangles in Adobe Muse. And then we have the balls, or the squares, turning into the circles here, just like this. All right, looks good. And we have, the widget options here, and looks good. So that's it for this video tutorial. Again, I do this to help you build awesome websites without code. If you like this video tutorial, you can subscribe below. Also in the show more section below are links to other resources and links to museforyoushop.com. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Thank you.